Good deal. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Preservation Subcommittee of the Affordable Housing Task Force. We've got a wonderful agenda today. We're looking forward to the conversation about recommendations. But first, the co-chair task force, Edward Henley, has an announcement to make.
Awesome. Well, good afternoon, everyone on the Preservation Committee. Mick Nelson, my co-chair and also committee member for Preservation, won't be joining today. He'll be absent. But that is because, for a wonderful reason, he and his wife, Caitlin, have just welcomed their first child, a beautiful baby boy, and both the mommy and baby are doing well. So he'll be out of pocket for today for reasons we all understand, but just wanted to share that. I know he shared that, I believe, with a few of the co-chairs and others. And so everyone is celebrating with him today. So just wanted to share that before we get going.
And Edward, will you promise that Mick will share pictures as soon as possible, maybe next week?
Absolutely. It's the task force baby. It's the affordable housing baby, which is so appropriate. I always say that he and Caitlin are the first family of affordable housing. And so for him to have a baby during the affordable housing task force is just like spot on. So I'll make sure that happens.
Excellent. We appreciate that. Thank you for sharing the announcement with us. So folks, I'm going to just run through the agenda and just a couple of things I just want to be sure we cover before we kick off our conversation. First and foremost are the guidelines. So today begins the conversation around your recommendations. So we shared guidelines at the beginning of the task force at the end of January, and I'm going to run through them just very quickly. It's going to be important that recommendations that are being added to the table and that are going to be discussed and included in the report, that happens live. If off screen you all want to chat about a recommendation, enhance it, make it better, talk through some details on a recommendation, that is perfectly acceptable, provided that when you make a change, it gets on the recording. Very important that we ensure that everyone can have a chance to speak during meetings. And so that means really respecting the time and the agenda. And so I'm air traffic controller here on this call. And so I'll be monitoring that environment and ensuring that everybody has a chance to speak. For members who are listeners, please consider speaking more. We will be watching you to be sure that we hear from you. For members who are talkers, we know who you are, so consider listening more. Be sure to speak up if you disagree, okay? There will be disagreements here. Let's disagree on content and subject matter detail, but silence in this environment is considered agreement. So if you don't speak up during the meetings, we won't know that there is a disagreement. So we really encourage you to step forward. And then ultimately, as we come to voting on things, we can always turn to Robert's Rules of Order if we need to take a vote, if there's not consensus. So I encourage you to ask questions offline about our guidelines. And if you think we're missing something, we will be sure to add an additional guideline and go over that in the next meeting. So as we dig into today's topic, you see before you on your screen is the agenda. A couple of things I want you to keep in mind as we begin this discussion. First and foremost, as members, your role is really to contribute ideas and to ask questions. The co-chairs, the subcommittee co-chairs, are really going to help us identify blind spots and missing information and to help to clarify information. Edward will also be on deck in that role too, just to be sure we get a very complete picture of recommendations. In order to create that complete picture of recommendations, we want to keep in mind our working goal. Our working goal at the top of the agenda is Nashville housing options are affordable, accessible, and available to all Nashvillians. How do we measure that goal? We use population indicators. Some of the population indicators that have been provided for us by Greg Claxton in his level set packet have been around the supply gap and have been around housing affordability. So we're going to work to get those metrics, those indicators right. I know there are questions about which indicators we pick, but we will be sharing some more on that in the meetings to come. But for right now, that's what we've got. We will be measuring housing availability and affordability according to the supply gap and the general analysis on housing affordability. So what does this mean? As you consider your recommendations, think about how they support that overarching goal. We want to be sure that your comments are reflected in the document. All recommendations will be carried in the document. We really want to encourage you to consider low or no cost options. This is a criteria that is a general facilitation criteria. This is not a recommendation from the mayor's office. This is just a facilitation criteria that says, if there's an opportunity to do something that doesn't cost anything or that is low cost, point it out. We're also interested in using resources differently to get better results. Are there some resources that you're making recommendations on that currently exist that should be focused on a specific target income level? Okay, that's an example of that. There may be some recommendations that require additional information, research, or data. Flag that, because in the report, we will have a page or a section that will list some of those items. We know we're going to from 0 to 60 with this report. So there are going to be some things that we have to plan for and build in capacity to achieve them. And then finally, we always encourage off-the-wall recommendations. Big ideas that maybe are circulating, but have yet to really come to the center of the conversation. So this is an opportunity for all ideas at the table. Very quickly, I want to walk through our schedule for the next few weeks. This week and next week, we will focus on completeness of the recommendations and emerging themes. By the 25th, we will have an opportunity to review the other subcommittees' recommendations. So we'll take a look at creation subcommittees' recommendations. And then finally, by April 1, we will do a ranking of the recommendations so that we can identify high impact recommendations. There is a chance there might be an in-person meeting with the co-chairs. We are still under COVID guidelines around meeting size, so we'll be watching that carefully. But if there is a need for an in-person meeting to sort things or to clarify questions, we are going to have it on the calendar just in case. So that's where we're going. I'm going to stop the share and let Kay share her desktop. And she's going to walk through what is in the table so far. And Angie will also help to summarize some of the recommendations that are out there. As Kate gets her screen up, I can see that Berkeley Allen has a question. And so I'll take one question now. But as we're in a virtual environment, I am going to turn this back to Kay in just a couple of seconds. Berkeley, how can I help you?
Thank you, Dee. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. Just real quickly on the completeness aspect of what we're trying to do. Can we go ahead and just throw out things that are not low cost and know that they probably in the priority process may have to be moved down? But my hope is that we're still at the point of, as we think outside the box and off the wall, that even things that cost money should be part of the discussion, and then we'll get to the weeding out and prioritizing part later. Is that an okay way to proceed?
That is wonderful, and thank you so much for raising that clarification. Yes, yes, and yes. Absolutely make recommendations, especially if they cost money. We're just saying if there are recommendations that are low or no cost, please flag them. Or if you think they're low or no cost, please flag them. That's it. Thank you for asking that. I just want to remind everybody, if you're not speaking, please keep your mic muted. The WebEx environment is very loud. Okay, now I'm going to turn this over to Kay.
Okay, first of all, it's massive tree cutting day in my neighborhood, and the chipper is right across the street from my house, so I apologize for that background noise. So I have my document, and Dia, I'm clicking share.
Select, yep, there you go.
Okay,
There we go.
are we ready? Angie, are you there? Can you hear me?
I'm here.
Okay. So we've captured, as of, I think yesterday morning, all the additions so far that people have placed in this document. And what's going to happen at this point in time is, I think Angie's just going to give a brief review of how things look now, how in a summary, and then give you opportunity today, if there are items that you've thought of that you want to put in here, then we'll do that now. I can do that now as you all talk, so that we can make sure that we capture everybody's ideas and not miss anything as of today. So we have that opportunity to do that with you as we talk through this document as it looks right now. As Angie goes through it, there are we haven't sorted, we haven't organized, we haven't put in buckets, anything yet. We've just captured everybody's ideas, and there is some duplications. A lot of people have the same ideas, so we'll sort through those and reorganize those when we get to that point a little bit later. So Angie, do you want to take it from here, and then I'll capture information that people bring up today or recommendations that they like to add to the document.
Sure. I think Dia, you've sent this to everybody also, so they should have it. But if you haven't had a chance to sort through it, I don't think anybody would be shocked that most of the recommendations involve funding at some level, whether it's incentives or tax breaks, or funding the Barnes Fund or other kinds of opportunities. So I'm just going to summarize each one of these. All of you have this in the email to look at the details. I hadn't submitted my recommendations yet, so actually as I went through this, I had a couple at least to add, and we'll do that when we get through. And then we can we do want to hear from you. We want to hear creative ideas that may not be reflected, but I'm just going to get started sorting through. And Kay, I have it also up on my big monitor, so I can see it too. But the first one that's on the list, and we haven't sorted it yet, and it is it's kind of a hybrid of a tax break as well as repurposing a building, which is converting hotels that currently serve under the homeless assistance grant by providing tax breaks to make sure there are enough subsidies to cover rent. And that's a good opportunity for persons with incomes below 30%. The next one is to use the pilot program for mixed income housing. The next one is, and I don't think anybody's shocked to see this, create a permanent funding source for the Barnes Fund to not only preserve but to build housing. And then this also proposed adding a fee of 0.001% to any property built or sold over $500,000 or does not provide affordable housing. So it sounds like not only does this one propose the permanent funding source, but a potential idea for how that's funded. Another one is to increase the length of the pilots for the tax credit program. And this is related to the pilot tends to burn off before the tax credit compliance period. So this would be aligning those two things. A next proposal or recommendation is a reduced tax rate for privately owned Section 8 rental housing to help incentivize Section 8 landlords to participate in the Section 8 program, and maybe have funds from the Barnes Fund utilized to cover the increase in property tax revenue. The other one is create a new Metro Department of Housing that is fully staffed and include the Barnes Fund manager and the mayor's housing manager. So that is a new proposal. The next one focuses again on funding as well as collaboration, which is or data analyses, which is using the inventory that MDHA maintains around project-based rental assistance properties to see when those contracts are nearing expiration, and then have a plan to fund or retain those properties as affordable if the owner does not want to renew those. Here's a big one. A recommendation to issue $50 million in general obligation bonds to create a strike fund or a revolving loan fund below market to acquire and preserve affordable housing units at risk of reverting to market rates. So we're seeing a trend here with concerns we've discussed around the potential loss as compliance periods burn off with project-based rental assistance or even potentially LIHTCs. Here's one around zoning, which is to implement a zoning mechanism that allows for missing middle housing in certain neighborhoods and council districts. The next one is to collaborate and partner with MDHA to designate a defined number of vouchers for persons below 30% of the area median income. So this would be more of a rental assistance model to help people be able to find and stay in housing. This one is more around data analyses, which is to undertake a comprehensive inventory of public land and other public properties that are feasible for building affordable housing. This one is great. It sounds like it might be more for creating new housing, but thanks for that idea. And we'll also share that with our creation committee. And then here's one we need to know, and great recommendation to undertake an inventory of where we have existing affordable housing. That's always good to know. Here's yet another recommendation on funding the Barnes Fund in at least or greater than 30 million in each of the next 3 years. Another one around creating a subsidy for or a revenue stream for affordable housing, which is reinstating the real estate transfer tax for affordable housing. And let me get to the next page. And again, I'm giving high-level summaries. All of you have this on your screen to read across, as well as in your emails. This one is more of a collaboration and a communications recommendation, where Metro leads a statewide coalition to address some issues around the inclusionary zoning, rent control, and property tax abatements with the state legislature. So leading conversations about or with our state legislature to help us create tools at the state level to further affordable housing. Here's one to invest in MDHA's Envision initiatives that preserve existing affordable housing, stock in a way that creates opportunities as well as leverages other federal funds through the rental assistance demonstration program and other opportunities. One recommendation is to require affordable housing in River North and East Bank, where the city is already planning significant investment. And that's a great recommendation, and we'll also share that with our co-chairs of the Creation Committee. Since that's a new project that has yet to get underway. I'm reading through this one because it goes over 2 pages. Metro again needs to create a way to address the actions of the state legislature that affects our ability to create or preserve affordable housing. So that goes back to another recommendation that someone else enlisted. And I'm sorry, it's trash day in my neighborhood. I'm going to pause for just a minute and tell my little puppy to respect our meeting.
Can I ask a question, dear?
So, Mr. Latimer, would you hold off for just a second till we complete the list? We're almost there, and then we'll open for comments and discussion.
Okay, hopefully he'll settle down here in just a minute. I should have put him up in the room, another room. Another one, and then again, this one gets to Creation, which is finding a way for employers to get involved in the creation of affordable housing opportunities for workforce that's closer to those businesses. Here is a preservation recommendation to establish a system that tracks all affordable rental units and when those restrictions expire. So I think something very similar has been mentioned about tracking, knowing where our housing is and seeing how long it's going to remain affordable. Another preservation opportunity is to create or fund to create a fund that will help the city have easy access to funds when property is to purchase property that where the affordability is restriction is expiring, or to create incentives to help those owners keep those units affordable. Then one is to find a way for our codes department or planning or others to not add fees to the cost of developing affordable housing or minimize certain fees that they add to affordable housing units. The next one is to create a policy or a process to clear title on properties to that have back taxes. Another one is to create a policy dedicated to create dedicated resources for protecting unsubsidized naturally occurring affordable housing. So that is that's helping those that are in areas where the price points are already affordable, helping keep them that way when they don't have a subsidy in them previously. One recommendation is a first right of refusal policy that require owners of affordable housing to notify Metro as well as nonprofits before selling that property and giving either of these groups an option to purchase. Here is one that recommends engaging a public relations or marketing firm to promote the need and benefits of mixed income housing. Then it has established a budget as part of that recommendation. Here's another one on repurposing old buildings, convert non-used permanently closed schools into mixed income apartments to provide those to builders or developers at a reduced cost. One again on incentivizing Section 8 participation to establish a low-cost interest rate fund for landlords to update and maintain their units in the Section 8 program, and use that incentive to attract small unit owners to enter into Section 8. And here is one to establish an annual award program for any private builders or developers who produce 10 units or more. And so you're seeing we have a mix of some preservation and some creation, and we want to make sure we share those with our chairs in the other committee. And that's it for this list that I'm seeing. A couple of things, if Dia, it's time for me to talk about some of the things that I didn't see that I thought of.
Yes, please.
A couple of those were funding a robust home repair program for existing homeowners, low-income homeowners, to have the access to make those necessary repairs to age in place and stay in their homes, especially in areas where they're rapidly developing, and also to have a policy or establish a way to coordinate among the various nonprofit and governmental providers of home repair programs, such as MDHA, Rebuilding Together, Westminster, and even where I am with GNRC, we have a small program, and we all have major waiting lists. So having a way to coordinate all of those groups together. The other one that I felt was missing to add is a property tax assistance programs, kind of like a tax freeze, or what the housing fund is currently doing, especially as we have reappraisal years coming up and other issues that create that economic pressure on low-income homeowners. And then just generally some diversion programs for people that may be at risk of losing their homes. So those were three recommendations that I thought of as I was looking at this. And so with that, Dee, I guess I flip it back to you to open it up, or I can, whatever we do next.
Okay, so at this point, what I'm going to do is ask Kay to drop her screen. I know everybody has a copy of these. What Kay is going to do is she's going to take down everyone's additional recommendations. But before the end of this meeting, she will share those additions and just walk through what has been added. Offline, after this meeting, the table will go up into the SharePoint so that you can take a look at your recommendations and make additions to them by next Tuesday. So there will be a process online today to make additions, and then a process offline for you to get clarity. So we want to be sure we capture everybody's recommendations clearly. So with that, I am going to open the floor and see who has comments or recommendations. I'd like to go back to Mr. Latimer, who had the first one, beat everybody to the punch. So Eddie, take it away.
Okay, thank you. Okay, just a couple of observations. Quite a few of these are mentioned in some form or fashion 2 or 3 times. Like the issue of having a tickler system to identify units whose affordability is going to expire. It shows up both on page 3 and on page 8. And then on page 10, you got something related, which is where you have some kind of recorded deeds. They have to give a 12-month notice before they sell a property, affordable property. So, and then you've got Barnes Fund is in here several times. Another thing that was a really noticeable is about 4 or 5 of these recommendations require us to change the state's attitude towards us. And one of the recommendations actually addressed changing the state's, some kind of formal way to change the state's attitude. So I think all of the recommendations about giving us more control over our own city are really good, but I don't think we can pursue any of them until we get the state to kind of come up with some kind of peace negotiation with the state. So I'm just saying, I think that there are some things that we should be looking at when we talk these through about overlap, because if we could cut these in half, it's going to be easier to come up with probably priorities. That's just an observation thought.
Thank you, Eddie. Certainly the process will involve deduping the list, making sure that we streamline some of the recommendations. But for now, we just want folks around the table to get their ideas on. And as we move into the next meetings, there will be an opportunity to take a look at the duplication. Jeremy Height.
There we go. I wanted to circle back on the home repair program. One of the things that we've got is the Tennessee Repair Loan Program, and it does allow layered funding from other sources. For our purposes, it's the minimum's loan amount's $5,000, the maximum's $25,000, and the loan is forgiven over 5 years. So and it's a 0% fixed rate and deferred payment. So there's a platform there that the city could pick up on and help the people who are eligible in that program. So that would be another option to be able to do some of those repairs and keep people in their homes.
Good
Jeremy, do
deal.
you mean like sort of coordinating our wait list? And then is there a wait list for the program you're referencing, Jeremy?
I believe there's an application period. I don't know that there's a wait list necessarily, but it's subject to the funding availability, certainly. And it's
Right, okay.
statewide.
But since the other providers and funding sources all have wait lists, potentially we could then move or coordinate so that people understand that your resource exists. And then are they, because I know our capacity is a real constraint locally, as Angie was sort of saying, we have a couple of nonprofits. Are they then allowed to use that funding for, you know, just to work with a contractor to get the changes, updates made?
It is one that there would have to be some kind of work like that. I know we have some challenges with contractors, and just the availability of the resources to do the work is a challenge in a lot of places. So yeah, that would be something to talk through with our community programs folks.
Okay, great, thanks.
Other questions or comments?
Dia, I'm interested if any recommendation is a surprise to anybody, or they need clarification on it, maybe. I don't know. I just want to make sure that like as you said, everybody has an opportunity, regardless of how big and bold. This is the opportunity we want to have those reflected, and then once we capture all that, can prioritize.
I see Matt's hand is up as well.
Matt, what would you like to say?
Oh, that was is it Matt Wilshire? I'm sorry, that was a mistake. If I put my hand, I'm not on the task force so I apologize for that.
Well, do you have a question or a comment?
No, I'm here listening and happy to help out however I can.
Good deal.
I
So going
really,
back to Angie's question, are there surprises on here? Is this all familiar to folks? Are there things that you have questions about? I mean, one thing we could have Angie do is sort of walk through some of the questions on the items.
Hello, this is Lethea Mann. I'm not sure if this fits with the topic, but my suggestion of adding that fee for property that sells above 500,000. My question is, what is that number? I wasn't sure where to find the number of how much real estate sold in Davidson County in, say, 2020 or 2019 to know what kind of revenue that fee would generate. So if we could find that number.
Mm-hmm. I know that Metro has the number for the total of the permits issued, but that would obviously be different than what's actually sold. So let me see if I can find that even right now for the purposes of the discussion.
The Board of Realtors may be a good source on that. I think I've looked at that number before, and I apologize, I can't remember what it is, but it's an interesting number and well worth us considering.
So Angie, would you like to start? If I don't see members having any other questions, Edward Henley has his hand up. Edward.
Dia, you may have been getting ready to go there, but I was just curious as we start to think about the list of items. Would it be helpful maybe if we did highlight what the objective was or the objectives of the agenda were, potentially highlighting what may be perceived as low or no cost options, as well as resources that we already have that we may be able to do differently. I think to Eddie's point that he made earlier is some of these things are completely changing the political and legal environment in which we operate in today, but there may be some things that necessarily aren't that big of a lift. So maybe highlighting what maybe some attributes, right, of some items on the list.
I think that's a great idea. I also think we can take a look at any questions that were placed on the list as well and answer them as we go along. Kay, are you comfortable sharing your screen again? And Angie, can you walk through some of these items? We'll start at the top and flag the ones that have a small or no resource implication.
Absolutely. I'm looking here, starting at the top. I'm wondering on the, let's see, the first one does involve a tax break. So that would have a resource implication for Metro. Let's see here. Using pilot for mixed income would be more of a policy change than really a revenue change, although it might push up against the cap that exists for pilots. But
well, I think that would probably have to be. Oh, sorry, Angie.
No, go ahead.
That would probably have to be a new pilot.
Yeah.
Because it wouldn't be tax credit properties, so or it wouldn't be attached to the issuance of a new tax credit. So I'm really interested in the group's thoughts about if we were to launch a new pilot that's not associated with tax credits. Obviously it's sort of an easy concept for the council and maybe the public to understand that it would only be used for new properties. It's easy to understand we're not going to take anything off the tax rolls. But I think, the inverse of that is we have very few tools that help with preservation of multifamily currently. And, it's easier to sometimes have that initial discussion rather than trying to introduce things after the fact. So I'd be interested to know from this group whether you think a new tax abatement program should be focused on both preservation and creation. And if so, sort of what would be the ballpark to start with that, especially as a recommendation for this upcoming budget?
So can we flag that issue? Because this is the preservation subcommittee for a second. I noticed that Berkeley Allen had her hand up on this item. So I'd just like to get to Berkeley's question about this item before we open up to a new idea. So hold on to that idea of an additional tax credit. Berkeley.
Yeah, so I mean, Hannah and I have talked about this for what, a year or two now, trying to figure out what to do. And I will confess, I forgot that I was supposed to only talk about preservation. So this really probably is more useful as a creation tool. And if we can get it to that committee, Zulfa and I have talked about it as well. And the idea would be to have a parallel version of what we use for low-income housing tax credit for-profit builders who are not doing that, but who have continued to say that they would be happy to include some affordable housing if they could get a tax break for it. And by state law, the only way we can give tax breaks are through pilots or I mean, there's some other mechanisms, but they all involve a government entity being considered the owner of that. So I believe it would, I agree with Hannah that it would be another separate foregoing of income tax, as it were, and that it probably would only pass council if I had a cap similar in size to what we have on the low income housing tax credit. Which
And
I
then
think, how many is that? How much is that? 250 million of
It's 2.5 million
2.5 million. Okay,
annually.
so let's sort of note that number just so that we have scale in the notes section, even
Okay.
though we know that this would go to both creation and preservation.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, as Hannah has brought up, if this could be a tool for preservation, I mean, that's something worth speaking about. We have used the HIP, the Housing Incentive Pilot Program, which is an incentive program for both preservation and creation. So it possibly could be used that way, but that's not the way I've been looking at it. I just got
Okay.
confused.
So are there comments about the use of pilot to preserve mixed income properties?
I think again, it gets down to the methods and the calculations. So how many units are affordable, set aside, or affordable in mixed income properties, and a calculation which Kane could easily do of what that would translate to in terms of payment in lieu of. They already can do something like this with the existing pilot program that's run for the LIHTC project. So they already have a method to do these sorts of calculations. And I would defer to a conversation with those folks.
Okay, so we've got a
Yeah,
couple
so
of hands up. Hold on a second, Hannah. We've got a couple of hands up. So I want to be sure that we capture remarks from subcommittee members. I see Greg. After Greg, I saw Angela. After Angela, Edward, and then Berkeley Allen. Greg, take it away.
Sorry, that was by mistake. I'll put my hand down.
Okay. Angie.
I do see a useful way we could have this type of pilot for preservation. Well, if you had an existing apartment building that's aging and they wanted to rehab it, this could be a useful tool to make them set aside a percent for affordable housing that might end up being creation because they never had affordable units. But it could be a very useful tool for helping an existing apartment owner do some rehab, but also bring in some affordable housing units into that community.
Good to note. Edward.
I'm muted now. A little bit of what I was going to say, I think Angela already hit on the head, but I was going to ask, just as a novice, in what it would take in terms of a time frame to establish a completely separate pilot, right? So if a new pilot program is what's desired, what's the time frame there? I know we've got year 1 or 2 is kind of the time frame, but is that realistic based on what's happened in the past and what we might perceive for this?
I can give the background on that since Berkeley and I have been working on that. So to Kay's point, the formula that we had come up with, and this is, I would say, Berkeley, through our work, maybe 90% of the details have been worked out, but obviously that 10% is the really crucial stuff that we want to hear from you all on. So I met with MDHA and Joe Kane, Matt Loftus, and got their input. They suggested, as many of you may know, they underwrite all of the pilots, so they review all of the financials. They suggested that we take an alternate path, especially if we want the tool to function not only for people who do affordable housing day in and day out, but people who maybe are newer to affordable housing. So they suggested just having a calculation method so that the affordability is linked to how much tax credit you get. And I can share that, formula with the group. But I think that's also helpful for the public and council to know that the value the public is getting from those foregone taxes is directly linked to how affordable something is. Basically, the value that they're providing to the city. So the tool could function sort of the same way. So to your point, Edward, I think the capacity or time question on our side is, we could have that up and running, obviously would have to socialize it with council, would love anyone here who wants to sort of dig into the details. But, we've already talked to the Affordable Housing Committee at council about it, but also for developers in terms of utilizing it. If we make it so it's only new construction, it won't have a fiscal impact in the upcoming, fiscal year, which, we want these tools to have an impact as soon as possible. But if we did it for preservation, I think we would see applications in the upcoming fiscal year. So that's where if we decide we want to recommend $2 million, $5 million, split it between preservation and creation, there's some ways that we can really flex that.
Berkeley Allen, I noticed your hand is still up. Did you have a comment that you wanted to jump in here? And Edward, I heard you, and we'll come right back to you, Edward.
Okay, I'll be very, very quick. Hannah answered most of Kay's questions, which I appreciate. And the only thing I would add is that through the HIP legislation, we had defined some very specific things about what percentage of what niche of AMI would be required to be considered the appropriate amount of affordable in the mixed income community. So we've already got that spelled out, what would be required to do that. And then the tax abatement would equal the difference between market rate and the income connected rate, that's 30% of your income.
Okay, Edward.
That was literally Berkeley was hitting on what I was gonna say, because I see that it's the target AMI is at 80%, and I'm just curious. I mean, I think I agree that that's clearly an area that needs to be addressed in its threshold. But just thinking about the utilization of that, I open it to the committee, but up to the 120% that at least the city itself considers as the higher end of affordable housing, because I just think about the opportunity to achieve it and have more participation. I think the 120% is maybe more achievable when you consider spreading the funds around further. Just say it that way. I think you may be able to accomplish more accessibility to units with that. Again, it changes who you're helping, but I think when you count units, so it's always a trade-off.
Good deal. Okay, so are there more comments on this one? We did get a price tag, so we know that this one is not a low or no cost item, which is fine. We just want to flag which ones are, that's all. I don't see any more comments on this item. So Angie and
I have
Kay,
one question for the group about this. Would you guys want to see a geographic focus? I think especially there's a concern about preservation, obviously, in the urban core. It's really expensive to do new construction, so we could make the argument that you know, this new tool should be targeted in the urban core to preserve, you know, projects that maybe are expiring or just going to be sold. But to Edward's point, obviously, then that's the market rate in the urban core is going to be much higher than it would be in the outer core. So you get less units. But I would love to know what the group thinks about how we would structure that geography. And in Memphis, they have a similar program and focused it in some of their, you know, obviously they have more blighted, as HUD technically calls them, neighborhoods in Memphis than we do, but they focused their tool, their pilot in lower income neighborhoods. The criticism, valid, is that they were sort of sizing gentrification of those neighborhoods. So and you know, it's a conversation we all have about how we preserve space, bring new development to underinvested neighborhoods, but not expedite gentrification. So I would love to know from the group how you see that conversation of geography.
So I see Angie's hand up. Angie, can you respond to this?
I'm going to jump all over this because I fully support any mechanism we can to create or preserve affordable housing in the core. When we think about our hospitality industry, that continues to grow, and the workers there and the access to the transportation and the parking associated with that, I just think that's a great opportunity to connect the workforce to downtown, to those, to have that housing that's close by.
Excellent. Are there other comments on Hannah's question about where to focus this and whether to prioritize the urban core? Okay, well, one of our guidelines is silence is agreement. So, you know, I'm hearing, if there are no other comments on Hannah's question, I'm hearing that this subcommittee does believe that a new tool should focus on the core. Okay, very good. Let's keep rolling. Kay and Angie, do you want to move to the next one? What does the next one look like?
The next one, about creating a permanent funding source for Barnes Fund, certainly has a price tag to it, so it wouldn't be a no-cost option. The next one about increasing the length of pilots for low-income housing tax credits, which would essentially, I think, extend it from 10 years for a pilot to the full length of the tax credit compliance period. That would have a revenue impact to the city because it would further that abatement. So I'm sorry.
Yep, I see a hand up. So let's pause for a second. Eddie, did you have a comment on this one or the one before it?
It's just a mechanism thing. Why have we yet highlighted one box and not the others? I'm just trying to figure out what our method is.
Kay is our note taker on this. Kay, did you want to just share the highlight?
I had to take the screen down because it wouldn't allow me to unmute myself as long as the screen was out. The purpose of the highlight is to capture what people are saying today so that it just separates it. That's just for my purposes, Eddie. Just to capture what's being said today.
Okay, good deal. So Kay, go ahead. Why don't you put your screen back up? And we trust Kay. I just want to remind everyone that Kay is making herself indispensable today, and everybody will get a chance to take a look at the notes that are put together so that they can make additional edits to them by next Tuesday. So, you know, if you want to be sure that the complete idea is captured, you'll have a chance to do that. And then we're going to give Kay just a sec to get her screen up.
Oh, I thought it was up. Hold on.
Here it comes. It's loading. There we are. All right, Angie, take it away.
Okay, back to, I think it was at increase the length of pilots. There would be a fiscal implication, I believe, on this because you're just furthering the abatement. So I'm assuming when we mean no cost, there's no also fiscal implication to the city. The next one on having a reduced tax rate, again, would have a fiscal implication to the city because they're not creating as much tax revenue. Creating a new Metro Department of Housing. I assume if that means it's also would be built out, so there would be budgetary implications, so that would not be no cost. The next one is to look at MDHA's inventory of PDRA properties, and then have a plan and funding to convert those units and that are expiring. So that would also have financial implications. Of course, the next one on issuing 50 million in GO bonds would certainly have a cost and a price tag. So here's one, maybe no cost, implement zoning changes that allow missing middle housing in certain neighborhoods and council districts.
So some hands have gone up. I see that Greg Claxton has his hand up. Greg, did you want to make a point?
I just wanted to ask a question on this one of just Kay or John, if y'all could talk through a little bit more kind of what you mean by implementing zone changes, and then if you have a sense of kind of the designated neighborhoods or council districts, like just, you know, kind of talking through how y'all anticipate that working.
Can you hear me, Greg?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So when Lucy spoke a couple of weeks back, we discussed the idea of doing an analysis and identifying where upzoning could come into play to allow for, instead of only single-family housing on lots, but it would also allow for small multifamily units that would blend in with the architecture of the neighborhood, like other communities have done.
So
we've lost the smaller multifamily, duplex, triplex, quads, and in fact, some neighborhoods have instituted zoning that that will not even allow for these, so it can't go there. But this is just to have something to fill the gap between large multifamily 200-unit projects and single family.
Okay.
Have another option.
Okay. So maybe areas where the policy, like the land use policy, would already support missing middle housing, going ahead and zoning those so that the regulatory piece that is supposed to implement the policy allows it.
Yes, and
Okay.
this is so in terms of so if you think of some neighborhoods in North Nashville, I know other neighborhoods, they have overlays or whatever that now you can't put it there, but I don't know of any in North Nashville or even East Nashville. I don't know how that would look. Would there need to be a policy that allows for the zoning change, that whatever that process is?
Right.
We would like to see the analysis done, what the maybe how many units maybe you could get out of it, and and then where it makes sense to put it.
Okay.
And changes around that.
Okay. That makes sense. Thank you.
Mhm.
Good deal. Berkeley Allen, you had your hand up.
If I'm not paying attention to the guidelines and talking too much, feel free to let me know. But this is very relevant because I have a bill right now going through the council that would simply create the possibility for detached accessory dwelling units, which is a second unit on a piece of property, through an overlay process. That means the neighborhood has to say, we want it. So it's not something anybody does to them. And I'm very surprised at the resistance that I'm bumping up against. So I would just say again, anything that involves increasing density is going to need to have a really effective marketing and education component in front of it. And I thought I had done that with this one, and I'm still getting a lot of pushback. And if this group would like to help me in this small attempt, it'll be back up on second and third reading in April. And it would just be so helpful to have some people who say they think this is a good tool, as opposed to all the people who are mad that I'm even making it possible without rezoning anything. I'm not rezoning anything. I'm just creating another tool. And the resistance is going to be something that we simply cannot ignore.
That's a good point on a lot of these recommendations as well. And so I see Edward has his hand up.
Yeah. Hey, Dia. Same comment as Berkeley. If I'm talking too much, let me know. But I just think, having a similar suggestion, and I won't cross-pollinate too much, but within the creation side, I think this is an opportunity to both work in both creation and preservation, particularly to Greg was asking the question, what areas or locations, and I think probably neighborhood character plays a big part. I think when you think about some neighborhood streets and corridors that have essentially transitioned over the past 4 or 5 years, and primarily due to HPRs being utilized as their the main tool to really tear down one and build two, right? So there's already an extreme densification in these communities. Maybe it's an opportunity to look at what a smart densification may look like for affordability. And so if there's some opportunities to look at what areas probably have had the most HPRs, I think there's probably a good barometer of where would be good locations, because you do have neighborhood characters that have changed relatively recently. The other thing I would say,
Edward,
is,
just for everybody on the subcommittee, HBRs, what does that stand for?
Oh, horizontal property regime, sorry, HPR. And so, for what we always say is it allows you to do the tall and skinnies, right? You tear down one house and you put two side by sides. It's the nomenclature that's often used. But I also think when you talk about maybe some conversions, there's a lot of pretty substantially sized homes in different areas of town that are they may have some one-offs that have been grandfathered in as duplexes or triplexes, but they're non-conforming currently. There may be an opportunity to look at offering those areas to allow for those conversions now, create more units that already fit into the character of neighborhoods.
Very good. So now that our chatty members of the subcommittee have outed themselves, I just want to take a moment and really reach out to some folks around the table, so to speak, and see if Mr. Alexander, Mr. Lane, and Ms. Arce have any questions they would like to ask Mr. Dean. If you all have questions about our discussion, Mr. Alexander.
Hi, I'm actually not a part of the preservation group. I was just listening in and curious, but I like the comments relating to better coordination of the home repair programs. MDHA has a home repair program as well. And then a second component of that is some coordination and some training to build a pool of qualified contractors. So I'll add that to the conversation.
Okay, good deal. And Kay, we'll let you add that, a pool of qualified contractors. John Dean.
Hey, everybody. Just a thought for the group to consider, and maybe our facilitators could help us with in the future meeting. You know, we hazarded to float some numbers in our recommendations, and part of that is to help folks understand that these are not small things, but some guidance would be helpful. And so how might we think about what the city of Nashville can afford and what makes sense relative to the scale of the problem, the scale of the city, and everything else? What's the upper limit of Metro's capacity to fund affordable housing initiatives out of the annual budget? What is the upper limit of general obligation bond that we might issue? There are practical upper limits to these things that probably would be helpful guidance as we finalize down the road. And then could landlord or developer tax breaks be in addition? And if yes, what's the upper limit of that? And all of this for many of us is in the context of we are reading excellent plans being promulgated by other cities that are making bold investments and big dollar investments in affordable housing. Where does Nashville want to see itself on that continuum? Thank you.
Great questions. You know, a couple of things. First and foremost, as part of the committee work, Kay has actually graciously agreed to put together fundamentally a checklist of finance mechanisms that other cities have and compare to what our current tools look like. Second, I think what is going to be important for this specific effort is to really get a handle on what are some immediate doable options for the city, and if there are robust items to include them in this process. We know, I mean, there's already a recommendation that folks are interested in a Department of Housing. There is a conversation about there are multiple different responsibilities across the ecosystem of the city. And so we know that there are questions about capacity, about analytic capacity. So, you know, part of this agenda is to allow us to surface what are some immediate opportunities. With that, what I'd like to do is we have about 20 minutes remaining. So I'd like to turn this back to Angie and Kay. And Angie, can you pick up, Kay and Angie, can you pick up where you left off so we can take a look at the remaining items?
Yes, glad to. So we were at the missing middle conversation. The next one is to collaborate and partner with MDHA. And this one looks like to maybe prioritize some of their vouchers for persons at or below 30% of the area median income. So I don't believe this is just a priority of their vouchers the way I'm reading this, and not really a budgetary implication. Would that be correct, Kay?
Correct. It's just, it's looking at leveraging resources. So we know MDHA has a voucher capacity, and it's looking at, particularly when you're trying to house and keep house those at the 30% and below, economically, it's very difficult to do it if you do not have vouchers attached to it. So it's looking at what capacity or voucher capacity could exist within MDHA's voucher annual allotment that could be used to bring an asset, as I call it, to a project. And we would be a tenant with the voucher.
Great. So yeah, this would be really a no-cost option, just a prioritization of an existing asset we have.
Correct.
The next would be doing an inventory of our public vacant land and determining what's feasible for affordable housing. honestly, outside of paying, you know, a staff person or an organization to do this, this wouldn't really have a major price tag to it. I would say it would be a no cost option. The same one that follows immediately after about an inventory of existing affordable housing and where it is located. That's along the same vein there of a no cost option of getting our arms around what's available land wise. Of course, the next one, big price tag on funding the Burns Fund with more than at least $30 million in each of the next 3 years. So big price tag there. This one would have, this one I don't know about reinstating the real estate transfer tax would be, I would think, more of a legislative change than a no cost option because it is actually creating a new revenue stream.
Yeah, it's revenue producing.
Yes. And it looks
we're not sure that it requires legislative approval because it was changed last time by the governor. And
okay.
so it may be a gubernatorial executive decision, something different than passing a bill.
So that would just need some research on who needs to take what action and how we go about getting that.
All right, the thing happened is the state hit a budget shortfall. This is the House grant money, right, Andrew?
Yes.
So what happened is the state had a very huge financial deficit. They did not get rid of the transfer tax. They just deferred it to go into the state pension fund. So the state, that tax still exists. It's still being set aside, but the target of the tax changed. So really you're starting at ground zero again, because I don't think the state pension fund's going to give it up.
So it's redirecting this back to affordable housing.
Well, that could be a goal, or to start something new, do it again, or just for housing. Like one of those two.
Got you. So there would be a financial implication to the state if they're allocating it to something there.
There would be, Angela. It would be. This is Jeremy. It would be tacked on as a fiscal cost because the location where that money is being designated now would have to have either a commensurate replacement funding, or they would have to make a determination that that's something that they would want to change.
Let's also remember that in state revenue issues in the state of Tennessee, that you can create an increase in existing revenue mechanisms, provided that mechanism exists. But I just, obviously this is complicated. This is a piece of policy. I think it has other issues other than being no or low cost. So I suggest we continue to move because I want to be mindful of folks' time today. What's our next item?
Our next items were related to communication and advocacy about creating a statewide coalition that just furthers affordable housing and going to the legislature about those actions that have really limited our abilities. So that would be a no cost option. It would just be getting that coalition together and getting that messaging. This one, investing in MDHA's Envision initiatives would have a price tag. So that would be a financial implication. The next one, and again, this would be more on creation, Dia. I don't know how much time you want me to spend here, but since it's on here, I'll just say that this would be more of a policy restriction requiring permanently affordable housing when the River North and East Bank starts being developed, which is underway pretty much now or being explored. Let's see, this one is about the city needing to establish control. Okay, this is another one on essentially preemption, it looks like, more of an advocacy communication, but not really a price tag. Another one would be, again, this is creation, the other committee, but we'll discuss it here. getting these employers in our communities to, it looks like create housing, so it wouldn't really be a financial implication to the city. It'd just be working with those employers on creating that. This is what looks like a no-cost option, establishing a tracking system for affordable housing units. And when those restrictions expire, the next one will have a price tag because it's recommending creating a fund. I can't tell if I'm echoing, if I need to move back from my computer. My apologies there, I'm getting feedback.
Angie, you're echoing.
Pardon me?
There is a bit of an echo.
Okay, I'm going to step back for just a minute. Here's another. Well, I would say when I first looked at it, there would be a cost because it's recommending that codes not add fees. So if the city's budgeting for those fees in there every year, then not adding those fees to affordable housing would have a financial implication on the city. The next recommendation on creating a policy to clear title.
It's not an issue of, I think it can be done without that. Everybody should pay something. But just in the last 7 months, the cost of building a single family home has gone up $10,000. Well, if you're building a $500,000 home, that's nothing. If you're building a home you want online for $170,000, it's an awful lot. So what would be the cost that you would let us charge, what the city would charge us for labor versus to fund the whole department so that we can pay something, but we don't completely cripple the ability to create affordable, which is what's happening.
So Eddie, what about a scalable fee?
Yeah, that's great. That's a good word. Thanks.
So maybe Kay, we can add, instead of stop adding new fees, maybe we can add a comment on creating a sliding scale depending on the affordability or the cost of the housing.
You should be able to do it without necessarily adding any cost if you just shift the burden to the higher cost homes and relieve the lower cost affordable homes.
This is not my area, but I think the note about kind of needing to address at the state is important. I believe my understanding for most of our fees is that we're limited to the cost the service takes to provide, which limits our ability to sort of set that sliding scale, I would think. So don't take that as definitive, but I think putting this in the category of potential state work, I think would be important.
Thanks
All
for that
roads lead to the
clarification,
state.
Greg. Let's see, I think I went on to the next one about creating a fund for being able to purchase properties where their affordability restrictions are expiring. So that would have a price tag. I think we already talked this about fees that may be in here, or did I, oh, I'm sorry, I went back a page. I was on creating a policy to help clear title on properties due to back taxes. I don't know if that is a state law issue either on when a property has back taxes, how that's cleared through. That may need some more research, but
Angie, and what we can do since time is dwindling is we can flag items for additional research as we go. Okay,
let's do that.
This is Jeremy. On that one, I would look towards Memphis. They've had a very good partnership with the law school to be able to have people to help them research those and clear those titles on some of those properties.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeremy. Okay, next one, create a policy on dedicating resources and create resources. So again, there's a price tag for this one. The next one on first right of refusal, that would be, so a no cost option, and certainly something that could be implemented with a public subsidy. Perhaps we would want to look into the legalities of that. Engage a public relations marketing firm. It's always great to be able to educate. There would be a price tag for the cost of having that engagement, although not nearly the cost of, building a home. Convert non-used permanent schools and provide those to builders for reduced costs. So not sure what the financial implications there would be. If they're just sitting vacant, then it possibly could be a win-win. It would be a win-win situation for both the city and the housing community. Low-cost interest rate fund to incentivize Section 8 landlords would have a price tag. Build an annual award program for any builders who produce those units. I'm not sure what that really means, an annual award program. Is that a recognition program, which is how I'm interpreting? If that's the case, that is great to be able to highlight our success stories and how those, but if award means funding, then there would be a price tag. So maybe Mr. Lane can clarify that. We can reach out to him.
Angie, Mr. Lane is on the call. And Mr. Lane, would you like to clarify that? Is this a recognition program or is this an award, a financial award?
Okay, it's not a financial award, but a recognition award. And I'm basically thinking about builders who may be building 50 to 100 housing a year. Let's recognize those builders who would be willing to, say, set aside 10 of those or a certain percentage of those to fit within the 60 to 80% AMI affordability, and give them special recognition and maybe even use it to highlight them, which could be part of marketing them to the city, that these are builders who are doing this or doing that. Who are contributing from a private standpoint to including affordable housing in their product as a product in their production of housing.
Good deal. Thank you, Mr. Lane.
Great. And then ones Kay added that I had, funding a home repair program more robustly would obviously have a price tag. Of course, any kind of tax assistance program that would be created by the city or implemented would have financial implications. Coordinating home repair providers, that would be a no-cost option. Establish diversion programs for people at risk of losing housing. That would have some kind of financial implication also. So most everything, Dia, it looks like does have some kind of price tag. Some not as large as others, and then some have a lot of research involved as we explore further.
Very good. So we've got about 4 minutes left. So thank you, Angie and Kay, for walking through this. We've also identified a few items that require clarification around the legal or policy environment. We have a few items around the finance piece to better understand. We hope to have some insights into the finance piece during the process of the task force. There might be some additional items that have to be flagged for additional research down the road. And so what's going to happen next is and Angie are graciously going to load all of these comments and additional changes into the document in a different color. The document will be made available. Kay, are you comfortable doing that by tomorrow, having it up by tomorrow evening so that folks have the weekend? Does that work for you? You're muted.
Delayed, yes.
Okay.
As long as I have 2 more sets of eyes on it.
Good deal. And so we will turn this document around to the subcommittee to just take a look at it. We're also in preparation for next week's meeting going to have this categorized by general category in terms of taxes, zoning, et cetera. And we'll also identify some emerging themes. We've got 2 minutes left. And so I can turn over 30 seconds each to Mr. Latimer and then to my colleague Hannah Davis. Eddie, what's your comment?
Okay, real quick, I'd like to add one more if we could, Kay. The state of Tennessee is one of the few states in the union that for amount of income it takes in, the taxes that low-income housing tax credit properties pay compared to their income is higher than taxes paid by apartment buildings in Green Hills. And it's, Dwayne Barrett can give you all the tax numbers and all the details. But we really need to address the state on this, especially the city Department of Finance on this, because that's just really almost punishment on those business people who try to provide affordable housing.
Thank you, Eddie. Yes, that is a critical item, and we will trust Kay to get that in there. Hannah, 30 seconds. Hannah, your mic is closed.
Mine are more in-depth, longer discussions, so I'll try to find time for them on next week's call.
That sounds great, Hannah. All right, folks, you can find us offline. We'll get this circulated by tomorrow evening, and you'll have an email when it's up and ready to review. And we will have the next cuts and iterations of this list in time for next week's meeting on Thursday. Thanks all. Have a good day.